Okay, welcome to Unschooling Conversations. Today I'm joined by Melissa, who I met at the very recent Unschooling Summit, which Melissa co-organised with the lovely Esther. In this episode, we are going to, or Melissa hopefully is going to share with us how she came to unschooling and how connecting with a community has impacted her unschooling experience, strengthened her unschooling experience. My name's Heidi Steele. I'm a former teacher, unschooling parent to 4 children. I have to pause now because I can't say 4 school-age children, and I've been saying it for so long it just trips off, but I can't say that anymore because my eldest is 18. They're happy living and learning as they go, and I have been unschooling for over 14 years now and offer support, resources and community for unschooling families at liveplaylearn.org. That's enough from me though, isn't it? Hi Melissa.
Hi, kia ora.
It's really lovely to have you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I was excited to be invited. So kia ora, I'm Melissa Crocket-Joyoue. I know people struggle with the surname. My wife is from the Caribbean. We live in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm autistic ADHD, unschooling mum or mama. I'm just trying to think how long. I think we started in 2021. And I have 2 children, or we have 2 children. My son is about to turn 10 at the end of the month, and my daughter turned 7 in March. So she's never been to school and had a grand 3 mornings with me in tow of preschool before she decided that was a definite hard no for her. And they're both PDAs, I suspect very strongly. And my son, we start school at 5 in New Zealand, so he went to school at 5. I considered leaving him till he was 6, but he was very bored of preschool, wouldn't go inside ever, no matter what the weather was. Luckily, it doesn't snow here. And we decided to send him to school, and it was during the pandemic, so it was up and down and in and out, and it was a no from day one, really. So that was a really difficult period for us. So yeah, and then we're going to draw this out in much more detail, I'm sure, but basically we started unschooling, and we'll probably get to why we got to that exactly, but we started unschooling pretty much immediately once we decided to homeschool. And my son then eventually got an autism and ADHD diagnosis, and I've self-diagnosed him as PDA because it's not an official diagnosis in New Zealand. We also have a massive trauma picture as well. I had 3 heart attacks when his sister was a baby, and yeah, that was very near. Nearly wasn't here anymore each time with that. So there's a lot of trauma there as well, and separation anxiety and stuff. So it took us a while to get to the full picture of what was going on with the family. His diagnosis led to my diagnosis, and my daughter. And yeah, and then out of my unschooling journey has come a unschooling community that I run as well for neurodivergent or families with neurodivergent kids, and most of us are also neurodivergent. So yeah, that's come about through my journey and my need for connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that our journeys producing that need for connection, and then us stepping into spaces where we, both you and I, host groups of unschooling families, and I know we do slightly different things, but being able to be in a space with unschooling families, with like-minded people, in places. I often say, like, I do once a month we do it's just a social meet. We just get together online, and it's called tea and chat because I'm obsessed with tea.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. But everyone has to bring everyone has to bring their own tea or drink that they and we just hang out together online, and one of the motivations for that particular session is just being able to be in a space with other people who, if you raise something that's been particularly fabulous that week, or something your child's done that has been particularly challenging, that actually the default answer isn't, why don't you send your child to school? Like that,
Yeah.
you can sit in a space that says, like, unschooling questions have unschooling answers, and
Yeah.
just to be together where the predominant narrative isn't send them to school, send them to school, send them to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's
I think a lot of us push down our and don't communicate about our struggles or our exhaustion or etc. when we're not in an unschooling community or an environment, because we know that that's going to be the response of, well, you chose this,
yeah.
or yeah, or send them to school. So I think that leads to, when you're not in an unschooling community, I think that leads to a lot of us just zipping our mouth on things that you might otherwise connect with people on. Yeah,
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 and there is that element of connecting and being in a space where other people can say, yes, I've experienced that, and there's other people that have maybe been there before you and can share their experiences, or just being able to hold hold space for that, rather than, that keeping quiet, shoving it down, keeping it inside,
mm,
which I think you and me both know that's not healthy. That's
yeah.
not the way. That's
No,
not the way to
no,
be.
not
Let's
helpful.
suppress everything.
Yeah,
Let's hide everything away.
yeah,
Let's hold
yeah,
that in our
yeah.
bodies like this, and
Mm,
hope it doesn't affect us. That's not how that works. It does affect you. So
mm,
um so yeah, so I think we both really value um community and know its importance, um and its worth. Oh, I have something just popped up. Excuse me, everybody, when
I was like, who is that? It's your note taker.
oh, it's my note taker. Let's hide them away. There we go. Um, yeah, so let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit more about. So this fascinates me,
Mm,
in terms of your children went to school. So and you said you pretty much went straight into unschooling once
yeah.
your children left school. Like, how did that happen? How did you?
Fortunately, I had a I had a new friend who was a psychologist, and we had connected over our children having gifted diagnosis and being local to each other. And we found each other on a Facebook giftedness page. And when we'd kind of compared our diagnosis documents, and we had two children similar age, very similar diagnosis for our sons, in terms of giftedness, and my son's visual spatial gifted, and it just, so we really connected on that. And then she was unschooling. And because she was a psychologist who lectured at a university, I took her her knowledge to be a good source of knowledge, as opposed to having heard of unschooling in the past before I had children, and following maybe some fairly maverick, radical in lots of ways, unschooling Australian hippie family, and just being like, whoa, kind of following it out of like fascination with how could you do that to your children kind of thing. Um, to then having like a very academically minded person who had children very similar to mine, who I really connected with, who's also neurodivergent now, we both know, um, who I really valued what she was saying. And so and I knew that she was unschooling. Um, I didn't necessarily pick it straight away that that was going to be our path. But once I did start to think about it, I was like, well, she definitely knows what she's doing, and she's super well researched. And so we should look at this. So basically, Tumana had extreme separation anxiety from the first day he went to school. And the school did that same old thing of completely blaming it on me, that my trauma, because I had really severe PTSD at the time. Um, I now know I was an autistic burnout and had severe PTSD from all the near-death experiences and open heart surgery. And I went from an attachment parent to 5 weeks away from the children, unable to see them most of the time because of being in ICU and stuff. And um, uh, so when he went to school and was screaming and yelling and having absolute horrific meltdowns at drop off, um, I thought that it was separation anxiety caused by me, being, having been so ill. And the school absolutely cemented that and blamed that my separation anxiety and my inability to leave him and my guilt and so on was affecting him. And they stopped me from dropping him off. This was the school that I'd been on the board for before I'd had children because I was so passionate about governance and the school model and making this lovely little country school with 60 pupils be a great place to send my kids in the future. So I'd only stopped working there after he was a baby.
Are you curious about unschooling and want to know more? Perhaps you're on the edge of starting this adventure, or maybe you've been doing this a while, but you're looking for inspiration. After more than 13 years of unschooling 4 children and over 5 years supporting others on the same path, I have a vast library of resources that I'm happy to share with you for free, whatever stage of your journey you're in. You can check out the link in the description of the podcast, or you can head over to my website at liveplaylearn.org and look for the free resources tab. And there you will find lots of things to inspire you to keep living, learning and playing together. I said that the wrong way round, didn't I? Anyway, it's also a great way to make sure that you don't miss an episode of the podcast, which we will get back to now.
So I'd been on the board and I'd had a role as a fundraising and communications person for them. So it was really hard. And that went on and on for months. And he had some periods where he was kind of okay. And those were the periods where there were like Māori festivals on and things. So I was going on and helping out with those cultural festivals and things. And he didn't make any friends. He had like one 10-year-old girl who he was friends with as a 5-year-old. And he was just it was just really difficult. And we had lots of parental meetings and so on. And we then got his gifted diagnosis because I could tell that there was something different with him. And I stumbled upon giftedness and was like, oh, okay, he's just got really high psychomotor and imaginational skills and sensory differences and stuff. And so that's what I seized upon as my, that must be what's going on. But they wouldn't take any of that on board. And he was just really frustrated. And we went in for a parent teacher meeting, lots of them, but we went for, one of the official ones. And one of the key things that I was starting to realize really that school was not for him was you're on these little tables and chairs and the teacher's sitting there and you're sitting there in you'd call it the primer class, I guess. And he was elbows on the table, feet on the table, off his chair, like an ADHD boy would be. And I was getting frustrated because I was just trying to finish talking to the teacher and I was like, sit still, Tumana, and I was like, oh, this, must be some comment about it happening in class. And she was like, no, I've never seen him do this before. Like that he normally just sits there or he sits on the floor or he lies on the floor, but I've never seen him do this before. And Dora and I, my wife and I left that classroom and I just felt sick. I was just like, if she's never seen that, he is shutting down all of that movement that we naturally see at home. And I'm sure it was annoying me in that moment, but it was par for the course with my child. And I was just horrified. I said to Doria, how can he express himself through I was like, no wonder they only get like half a sentence out of him. Like, like if he's quashing all of his instincts that much, how can he be learning? How can he be expressing himself? So that was one of my big kind of moments. And we knew that we were going to have to homeschool him, but because of my mental health with the PTSD and panic attacks and so on, my wife and I didn't think that I had the capacity to homeschool him, and she was working. So we thought we'd try and have another year of him being at school. And fortunately, because it really would have just ruined him mentally, fortunately, COVID happened, and COVID for us was an absolute blessing because we locked down, and especially with my heart condition, we locked down really hard and we really isolated for the maximum amount of time and so on. And he went from having vomiting migraines 3 times a week from the stress to just happy and excelling in the, I was making him do school at homework, and I was letting him be on a computer and do the literacy program that they had, and they said we were only allowed to give him 20 minutes a day, and I was letting him do it all day if he wanted, and he was just going up, 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 up levels, and I was like, they just need to let him go, like, and he'd write under duress half a page of writing, whereas they'd get a sentence out of him at the most, with a teacher aide sitting with him. So I could see that we needed to homeschool him, and we just decided, never mind about my mental health, we needed to prioritize his. And that's then when I'd spent months trying to convince my wife that we needed to do this and that too bad, but we had to. And we realized during COVID that we couldn't drop him at the school gate and expect him to go in, which was what the new protocols were. It just wasn't going to happen. And then I remember standing at the bench doing the dishes and starting to cry and just being like, how the hell am I going to homeschool him? Like, I don't have the capacity to do this school at home, and had tears, and I'm doing the dishes going, oh my God, I finally got this. And now it's never going to work. And that's when I spoke to my friend Yaz, who was like, just unschool him. You don't need to be sitting there teaching him maths. And that's a really long answer, but that probably answers a whole lot of your
You
questions.
never looked back. No, I love that. I mean, my children never went to school. Um, but like I can really relate to, because I was a reception teacher, so I was the one where the children came in first. That was their first experience of school.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been the teacher who's been on the other end of the separation anxiety, or children that just don't don't want to be with me for 6 hours a day, because that's
Mm-hmm.
not actually biologically
Yeah,
normal.
sound. Yeah.
It's not. And it's an awful position to be, a parent who is told that it's them that's wrong and it's their child
So
that's
common.
wrong.
Mm.
And it's massively common, and I've been the person that's said that. I didn't say they were wrong, but I've been the one that's been like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're fine once they come in,
They're
and
fine
yes, we'll
once you've
we'll look
gone.
after them,
Yeah.
and I did look after them to the best of my
Yeah.
ability.
Mm.
But now I look back and I think it's not like to be told that it's you or
Mm.
it's your
Mm.
child, and it's actually, it's not biologically normal for us to
Yeah.
be separated
Mm.
from our caregivers, from
Mm.
our immediate family, then from our extended family. And we're supposed to be, because I'm going to come back to community, we're supposed to be in
Yeah.
community. We're supposed
Mm.
to kind of, in an ideal situation, live and breathe and work together. We're
Yeah.
not supposed to be, dad goes to work here, mum goes to work there, kids go to school
Mm.
here,
Mm.
grandparents are in a care home, babies are in the
Yeah.
nursery.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
not
all
how
the
we're
early
supposed to
childhood.
be.
Yeah. And all
No,
the early
we're
childhood services as well, which I think made it more difficult for my children as well because they'd never, um, my children had really severe food allergies. So Tumana, yeah, particular, so from 6 months old. And so they never were cared for anyone apart from my parents. And then we started 2 minute preschool when he was 3 and old enough to not eat anyone else's food. So, um, and he only did, 3 mornings a week at the most once I'd had my heart attack. So he did like 2 mornings and I had a new baby. So he might get there at 10 a.m. and then got picked up at 12. So, um, yeah, he wasn't used to that grind that a lot of our children are put into from babies. Yeah, so that was another factor for him. But I mean, he had really severe school trauma from that, and he got bullied at school as well, which I only really found out afterwards. And some of those memories for me are horrific, let alone him, and I don't know how much of it, but 45 minutes of him screaming and refusing to be pulled out of the car, and then me driving off with the principal and his lovely teacher, but restraining him on the concrete while he screamed, "Don't leave me, mama." Um, you know, just he ran away from school multiple times off the school property and stuff. So really clear indication that he could not be there. And we just kept pushing through. Yeah. So there's yeah. It's a pretty typical story for so many of the families that yeah, that I know and work with. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. It's not something that's like a one-off. It's like I think there are a lot of children certainly across the world, but like in the UK who are literally screaming, I don't want to be here. This isn't,
mm,
even if they're
mm,
not doing it
mm.
with their words, they're doing it with their actions. They're shutting
Yeah.
down, they're burnt out,
Mm,
they're
mm,
melting
mm.
down when they get home, they're
Yeah.
running
Oh,
away from school,
yeah, the
they're
school
not
pickups were just
engaging.
as bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So it's not, it's really sad to say it's not an uncommon
Yeah.
story, and a lot of the families that I work with, very similar to you, like the neurodivergent families are the
Mm.
ones who are kind of hit the hardest, and
Yeah.
um yeah are yeah it's
Yeah, I mean,
really
I
it's really
spoke about
difficult.
it. I've just written an article for the ASDE on like neurodivergent unschooling, and I said it's kind of like I'd say reading and listening to other people's stories for a neurotypical family. It's probably there's like a kind of a 5-year trajectory from when you start, homeschooling, or maybe you're going to start unschooling to the point where you yourself, excuse me, as a parent are fairly deschooled. You trust your kids. You let them have a certain amount of screen time or lots. So, like there's kind of a trajectory from where you start to where you end up. When you're a neurodivergent family, I think that that's put into like about a 6-month period a lot of the time, or a year, because your children just challenge you so much on everything and refuse everything. And it's like a pressure cooker, a
Yeah,
microcosm of just like this whole journey just gets put down into this very short, intense time, particularly if your children are in burnout and refusing to leave their room or the home. Everything. So the sense of isolation that maybe grows over time as a parent, or the sense of wanting them to maybe be doing more, like these things that we kind of naturally ebb and flow during an unschooler's journey, seem to just all get hit real quick. And we have to
yeah,
like learn how to deal with them fast. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's
definitely. So talk to me a little bit about the value that you find in community, and why it's something that you need.
sure. So we started unschooling, which we basically decided it was maybe September, so that's spring for us, and we decided we would completely de-school and take all pressure off. So we'd done this little bit of like school at home during COVID, and we realized once we decided to homeschool or to unschool that was we weren't going to be doing any of that. We just needed to completely take the pressure off. And so we thought we'd do, at least the summer, and we worked out he'd probably need maybe 6 months or so minimum of um, deschooling time, took all the pressure off. So we got through to about January, February, and I was starting to do some kind of art and craft stuff with my daughter, and my son was starting to kind of get interested, and we were doing lots of little day trips and things. And I was like, this is like he's really blossoming. And as a family, this is it, we've come back from my heart stuff, and we're really starting to unschooling is the lifestyle for us, and this is beautiful. Um and then in April my wife became severely ill, and had a massive health scare with hospitalizations and major surgery and so on, and it just threw us completely backwards. My son went into full on burnout again. And that's when we started to realize that perhaps he was autistic. So, because the meltdowns and so on were so intense, we were very much stuck at home because of his extreme anxiety and meltdowns. Um, my daughter went into full shutdown because my wife had become her primary attachment figure when I'd been in hospital. Um, and it was just all really, I'm not going to swear, really awful. Um, and I felt extremely stuck. I had felt like things were looking up for our family, and that this unschooling thing really resonated with me. And I'd been wanting children since I was 3. And for me, the thought, it had a really long time getting to them. So the thought of sending them to school at 5 was really sad. And I was like, I love this. We're all at home. Like my wife worked from the same property. And I was like, this is just idyllic. And then it really, really wasn't. And we were so stuck. So I found an online community so that I could feel like I was moving forward in our journey, even if we weren't doing anything. We were just being, but at least I was doing, you know? Um, so I listened to all of Esther's podcasts and I listened to a million of Pamela Rickia's, and I found this other podcast, a great New Zealand podcast, Stark Raving Dad, and he's a fantastic unschooler. And he started a community right at that time where I was like, I need a community to help me feel like I'm learning and I'm, you know. And so I jumped into his community, and that's where I kind of started to find that, because we couldn't find community. There was a community locally, like there's always been a homeschooling community in our rural area. We live like an hour north of the biggest New Zealand city, Auckland, but rural and on the coast. So there'd been kind of lots of hippie families and homes. There'd always been lots of homeschoolers around. And during COVID, 2 massive groups of like 100 and something families started. But those were too big and intense for us, and we couldn't attend any of those events with like even 10 families was too much for my boy to cope with. So I wasn't getting any in-person social contact. And I have one local friend who I talked into unschooling at the same time as us. So there is her. And it turns out all her children are neurodivergent too. So, but going into this online community was amazing. And I jumped in true Melissa autistic ADHD style and was all over it, and, you know, starting chats and posting things I'd found and doing lots of online courses and so on. And they did Zooms, started off doing them about once a week, maybe, and then we're doing them fortnightly. And they had them on 2 different time zones. So I'd attend both Zooms because I was like that desperate for community. Monday morning, Monday night. And they were amazing. But what I found was that I started to feel more and more isolated, because when they were talking about, you know, if I'd put a question in or ask something about feeling isolated, and they would all talk about suggestions of how to get less isolated, none of them would work with my neurodivergent family. And at that time, I just thought that my son had extreme anxiety, and I think we hadn't yet discovered the full autism picture as well. And so it was just like he's got extreme anxiety and so on, and so with peers in particular. And I'd feel like really great in the Zoom, and then I'd go away afterwards and I'd be like, none of that is going to work for us. And I just felt more and more separate from the people that had found as my community. And so I asked if I could start running Zooms for the neurodivergent parents in the family, or the families that suspected they might have neurodivergent kids or kids with anxiety and stuff, so that we could have somewhere where we could kind of talk. And so I started doing that once a month with them, and we got a group of probably about 20 of us who were starting to discover that our kids could be neurodivergent or maybe highly sensitive, was, you know, how some people described it. And at that point, I just thought that I had a gifted kid who was neurodivergent. But I started to go down the rabbit hole of, oh, I think I'm ADHD, which I discovered through my PTSD research. And then when we started to look at 2 minute having an autism diagnosis, and I started filling in all the forms and started realizing, oh, that's not unusual. I do that too. And yeah, that's when I started that. Yeah, that's a pretty typical
story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just started doing lots and lots of courses online with Naomi Fisher, and doing online summits around ADHD and giftedness and bright and quirky kids and 2E kids, and listening to podcasts and so on, and feeding all of that back into the community that was starting to build. And then Izzy decided to more return to his podcast and not run the community anymore, and said, you know, yeah, why don't you start a Facebook group? And so that's what I did, and took the parents that had been coming to the group, to the Zooms, and kept doing kind of 1 Zoom a month, and then it grew into 2 Zooms a month, and then the community just grew and grew. And yeah, so that's where we started. And last October, I took it into a paid online community because I was spending so much time on it. My wife still isn't able to work because of her health, and I hadn't been working because of my PTSD, and we needed to bring some income in. So yeah, so now we've turned it into a paid community, which has been challenging for me to do that because I just want to support and help everyone. Um, but I either had to close the community and go and get a real job, or yeah, keep going with that. So I mean, I'm sure you know the challenge that there is in in that journey. But it's been amazing. And what I discovered with our community, as we went along, was that not only was the sense of connection with like-minded people who were experiencing the same kind of intense unschooling that I um, was that the more and more that I did things like courses with Esther and listened to Naomi and Christy Forbes and so on, was that key to all of this was that the well-being and capacity of the parents and often their mothers, who are the ones who are responsible for the unschooling and the daily care of our unschoolers. And for all of the different ways that we can help our children, um, many of us can't actually access any support outside the home through either financial or just different country capacities, services that are available or not, or our children just won't interact with anyone. We need to basically be looking at ourselves. And I read a really lovely blog post, and I can't think who it was, an American woman, and I don't think she was unschooling actually. I can't remember, but she was talking about neurodivergence. She might have been homeschooling, and she spoke about how you have this kind of big revelation at some point in your journey that no one's actually coming to save you and help you. A lot of people think, well, once I get diagnosis, then I'm going to have support. Doesn't happen. Once I, find, I don't know, the right OT, things will change, it doesn't happen. And so you go through all these things and you're like, this will be the golden ticket that will ease things in our family. And then you realize that either you can't access it or your kid doesn't engage and so on. And so basically, no one is coming to save your family. It's up to you, is the first revelation. And
So
then
I
once you,
wish I need to find, I'm going to go find a thing, which
yeah,
is going to be very visual. So hopefully people, I'll describe it when I found it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
keep talking and I
I'll
will
just,
go,
yeah,
and
finish
I'll
this.
go off and say, yeah.
Yeah. So she wrote this blog post, and then about a year later, and she didn't write hardly at all in this blog. And then about a year later, she wrote another post that was like a follow-up, but I read them back to back. And the second one was, so once you come to that realization that you're the one that needs to, you're the linchpin in all of this, you're the one. She said, then you come to the realization that no one's coming to save you. And that when you burn yourself out because you're holding and fixing and serving everyone else and so on, um, like there is probably nothing there for you. Like you need to save yourself as well. You need to hold yourself and provide for yourself and look after your mental health and all of that. And the way that she wrote it was just really resonant to me. And I was like, that is so true. And I could see in my group that lots of families were coming in crisis. And those of us that had kind of been through the fire and were in a bit of a flow after the ebb stage, we're in a fairly balanced position, could provide a whole lot of advice and support and help the new people out. But those members of the group, it was just becoming very stressful in the group, I think, because there was people coming in really stressed, and those of us that had been around for a while could help them. And I was like, I need to provide something for all of us that actually nourishes us and that
Yeah.
looks at our well-being and our capacity, because we need to find some way to in really accessible small ways build up our own capacity so that we can look after ourselves.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we do in the community I run as well. So we get that we have a session which is dedicated to sharing ways that we can integrate into our day-to-day lives with our children alongside us, because
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
with our children 24/7, with
Mm-mm,
children who have high needs, who are neurodivergent, who are
mm-mm,
like in our space, on us
mm.
physically, in our
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
noise all the time. And we and because I a little bit like you really am passionate about this fact that we need to be taking care of ourselves as well, that there
Mm,
needs to be
mm.
um I'm going to share this picture. So Eliza, I'm hoping you can see it. Eliza Fricker has just
Yeah,
in the last month drawn me this. I
yeah.
commissioned her to draw it for me, but it is exactly what you've just described. So
Right.
I'll do a description for those on audio. So
Mm,
at the top of the picture there is a child that's hanging on the edge of what's known as the bell curve. So in
yeah.
schools they draw a bell curve to show
That everyone.
where your child's at developmentally,
Yeah,
and a lot of the children that we are talking with and the families that we work with have children who are on the ends of the bell curve. So the middle of the bell curve is in
yeah,
quotations
average.
normal, average,
Yeah. Mm,
and then so you've got this child hanging off the end of the bell curve, and what fascinates me about what you've said is that I can resonate and agree with what you've said about um thinking that when you get a diagnosis, that's going to be your golden ticket. When you get the
mm,
you're going to get this support, you're going to get this. I mean, it's even got OT written on there. And the blog
yeah,
post that
yeah,
you're
yeah.
referencing is American, and you guys are in New Zealand, and we're all like, it's not the golden ticket that people think it's going to be. So in the
Mm,
middle of this picture, we've got support services, teachers, OT, Senkos, whoever official folk out there, with their little net that we're hoping our child is going to be caught in, and they're going to be
yeah,
helped out and supported, and the child's missed the net. There isn't really a net. There's a hole in the net,
yeah,
even, I don't know. And then at the bottom, I have to move my screen a bit because I'm double screen. Oh no, now you don't want that view. At the bottom is the parents catching the child,
yeah.
and so there's this sense that we are the ones who are taking care of the child. We're the ones who feel that responsibility and take on that responsibility in beautiful ways because we love our children and we care for them, and that's what we do. And then, like you say, there's this aspect where we have to be taking care of ourselves too. Otherwise,
Mm.
it, and I've seen it, and I'm sure you have families where that's not happened, where they haven't got community, they haven't got the support, they haven't got
Yeah.
someone coming alongside them in their learning, or like in their learning about unschooling
Mm, mm.
and in the challenges that it brings, um, and in this kind of different approach, and they haven't got people
Yeah.
coming alongside them, and it kind of doesn't go so well. It
Mm,
becomes extra challenging, extra difficult, for some people. So bringing in that community support, like-minded people, and the
mm.
aspects where we learn to, in gentle and beautiful ways,
Yeah.
um, connect with ourselves, get
Yeah.
to, like, for me a lot of this is about connection, but
Mm,
the connection with ourselves, getting to know ourselves, getting to know what we need, not what someone else
mm.
tells us we need.
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah.
to be familiar with ourselves, and then being gracious and compassionate with ourselves as well, and
That's hard.
it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
hard. I mean,
Yeah.
because so many of
Yeah.
us have not had that experience of
Yeah.
someone. Well, we haven't, we
Mm.
haven't. A
We
lot of it
did.
comes back to schooling and the messages
Yeah.
of schooling and
Yeah.
cultural parenting and lifestyle.
Mm.
It's not something that we're good at, even
Yeah, I
slightly.
just want to show you this.
um
I was looking
yeah.
while you did that. It reminded me. So one of the mums in my group, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but let me get the screen right. She did this, and so it's free falling through the cracks, and these are all of the different stratas of support she thought she was going to have, and this is her down the
Oh
bottom.
wow.
The bottom is the village. This is all backwards. But it's got, postpartum care, education, church, employment, health system, mental health system, disability services, government policy, and who's got natural disaster insurance as well, and the village, and she's just falling. Um,
Yeah.
and so that, yeah, and so what we're trying to do is put weave somewhere through there. So that's my community and your community. Um, we can't fix things, we can't, save people, but helping people to find connection is really protective, and helping people to increase their capacity, I think, is really protective. And like in the Unschooling Summit, the session that I had there on self-care, I organized a session that was looking after ourselves, or the importance of, and happened to most of the parents that we brought in for that panel. Most of the panelists were unschoolers who had neurodivergent kids, but we had like Christy Forbes and Ellie Davies on there as well.
So this is the part where I'm going to tell you about the Unschooling Village Hub. I wonder if that's something that you've heard of yet. It's a membership group I run for community, but also inspiration and peer support. Members get access to regular teaching and coaching workshops, self-care sessions, because taking care of you is really vitally important to your unschooling, and lots of practical resources for unschooling in your family. It's packed with value, events, and compassion. The best bit is it's only £20 a month with no ongoing contract. You can simply stay as long as you need us. You can find out more by checking out the link in the podcast description, or heading over to the website liveplaylearn.org and sign up there. And we very much look forward to welcoming you into the Unschooling Village Hub. We're here for you wherever you are on your unschooling journey. And now, more from the podcast.
Looking at how do we increase our capacity and care for ourselves when we have PDA kids and we're PDA ourselves, and looking after ourselves is just so hard. And like in our community, we have Esther Jones. Esther comes in once a month and does a mindfulness session for everyone. And lots of people have to watch it on replay, or they just get to part of it and then their kids interrupt them and so on. But we're trying to give like little tiny practices that people can do that will help them. And she did a great session we organized and had on Friday. And that was about, we've done ones on self-compassion and all these different things. But this one here was on actually just like finding things that make you happy, and making sure that you're actually like putting them into your day, because I think so many of us in the neurodivergent space are working so hard on regulating ourselves as neurodivergent parents so that our children can co-regulate with us. That becomes a really big emphasis of our days, and I know it is for me. And the thought of actually finding things that make me happy as well just doesn't even feature on that list, like a lot of the time it's really just about, can I regulate myself? How do I regulate myself in certain circumstances and so on? And so actually thinking about prioritizing moments of happiness for me, and seeking them out and noticing them during the day and noticing how I am. And we were doing like a practice that's about feeling within yourself and then coming back into the room and then going back into yourself. And so things like that, where we're giving little tips of like, how can you be okay in yourself when everything around you is chaos, and how can you kind of practice these practices in our chaotic lifestyles. Those sorts of things are so important. And I've got someone coming in next week to do neurodivergent creativity. So how can we find moments of creativity, and a nature one? And I'm like, some of our parents love to hike, but a lot of them can't leave the house. So how do we
Yeah,
how do we do nature wellness when you
yeah.
can't leave the house? And I pretty much bring in anyone that comes into the group to speak have either neurodivergent children, are neurodivergent, are unschooling, so that they actually understand the reality. Because I don't want
Yeah.
to bring in like a yoga teacher who's like, go and put your mat outside and the birds and and I'm like, whatever,
I'm really
um, I
enjoying
need something when I'm
listening.
watching the jug boiling. I need something that when I'm watching the jug boiling because my children are losing their shit over there, that I can be like, how can I drop into my body right now in this three
Yeah.
seconds I have, you know? Yeah.
I'm loving listening to things that go on in Weave. I think there are a lot of similarities between
Mm,
what we do, and I'm going to ask you
so cool.
in a
Yeah.
second just to explain about Weave and how people can get in touch with you. I've got your details, so they'll be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Um, but like similar to you, like I have this quite I only invite people into the space who are unschooling and neurodivergent, and either people I know personally or I've worked
Yeah.
with, because for all the same reasons that you've just shared, like being in a protected
Alienates you
space.
further
Yeah, it
if
alienates people,
it's not
but
a fit.
also if they so for example, I'm really happy for you to share about Weave and things because because I know that if people go to you, it's going to be a good experience for them. And so
Mm,
similar to what you were explaining, like I don't invite people into the spaces that I don't know well enough to kind of say i I'm fairly certain that this is a good
mm,
fit for your
mm,
family,
mm,
um
mm.
because
Because it
because of that
really,
isolation, because I don't want
yeah,
people to feel isolated and disconnected. I don't want them to go and have an experience that maybe I've introduced them to that,
yeah.
that they then go, oh, this is terrible, and I feel,
Mm,
and
mm, mm.
this isn't for me on whatever level, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it
It,
can really throw you when you've,
yeah.
especially when you've been the family that has been has got, neurodivergent children, or
Mm, mm.
and have experienced burnout. You really, you don't need the yoga teacher that says, yes, go and do this for an hour on your
Yeah.
own. What?
Yeah, or go out off the property and do a class. That's so important that you leave your children and have some you time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just not like, yeah,
It's
maybe in
so
10 years.
unrealistic. It's just not going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which
Like
I
this
can
is my
laugh about,
10-year
because
plan.
I can laugh about that now. I'm in a position in my life where I can just go, oh, okay, that's not going to happen. But I have previously been in a position where that's really made me feel really
Yeah,
alone in the world,
yeah, yeah,
and really made me disconnect and isolated, and just
yeah.
feel like I'm,
Mm,
yeah, like, yeah, all the loneliness.
yeah,
Please, please, please tell us a little bit about Weave, and then
yeah,
we will let people go and finish whatever it is they're doing whilst they're
yeah,
listening.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and we'll
I just
wrap up.
wanted to add one more thing as well, is like the communities that we're running, they're online because a lot of us, it's the only way that we can access community. And I think it's really valuable. And what we found in the summit, one speaker, Shivani, had this beautiful line about community, and he said that when you're connecting in community, you're connecting with your soul. So you don't need to be face to face with someone in terms of you don't need to be able to physically hold their hand or touch them, etc. That's not what being in community necessarily is. And so that really, I think, yeah, the value that you can find in an online community is amazing. And also that you can find community in unexpected places. So maybe having an online community serves a need that you have or a whole lot of your needs, but that maybe another part of that need that you have might be served through, regularly getting to the library if you can, or a connection that you can have with an elderly neighbor or so on. Like I think a lot of us think that we're going to find this, people talk about the unicorn community or the unicorn friends for their children or whatever. And it's like, for a lot of us, that's not the reality. And I think it's really important to be open-minded about where are we going to, what are the different needs that we have for our kind of social and connection wise, and then how can I meet them with online stuff and also within real life stuff. So kind of being creative about how you maybe find those connections. Um, so yeah, we're fed this line that our tribe, our community will be this certain thing. And actually maybe that's not the reality at all. maybe you need to kind of like patchwork quilt it together
Yeah.
from all sorts of different sources. So yeah, that's some of the stuff I took away from the summit was really some great advice on that. So yeah, so Weave, it's online, it's on Mighty Networks, and we have people from all over the world, including places like India and stuff, which are making time zone challenges a little bit. We do live Zooms 5 times a week, but we also have a whole lot of new members who um, are more US and UK and Europe based. So they're doing lots of impromptu Zooms as well. So people are decluttering together or chatting or hanging out doing housework, body doubling, and so on. So we have a space where people can just pop up an impromptu Zoom link and jump on and chat with each other, which is really nice. And yeah, and then we have like all different spaces and themes that are all about different topics. So I've tried to make it so it's not overwhelming because a lot of my people are neurodivergent, and it's you can kind of be in certain spaces and not in others and so on. So yeah, and the website's a little bit tricky because it's through Mighty Network. So if you just look at my I'll in the show notes, I'll put Instagram and Facebook, and I can probably put a link to like a connection to like an email connection as well. So yeah. Is that
Fabulous.
what you
Thank you
wanted
very
to
much.
know? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
no, that's
Yeah,
brilliant.
cool.
No, I
Yeah,
think we've got a
yeah,
really good insight into, or a really good flavour of what Weave is. And actually, more importantly, it's about being connected with you, I think,
yeah,
and just getting to know you a little bit, because that's what people yeah, I mean, yes, the content is, and the meats and all that. It's all
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Um, but
But it's more the
feeling a
feel of
connection with you
yeah,
is
yeah,
is
yeah.
is the
I
thing,
should
isn't it?
explain the name Weave as well. So it was called Aroha Mai Aroha Atu, which in Maori language means love given, and like so love given outwards and love received. Um and so it was kind of about that reciprocity, but I wanted to have something that was more accessible internationally. And so for me, it's very much like I'm leading it and drawing all these threads together, but basically it's so much about the hive mind, like it's the power of the community. And I can't be across everything. Everyone brings in different aspects and has different experience and so on. And so that's why it's called Weave. So it's about kind of this whole coming together, and the strength of that. So yeah, it's the more the community grows, yeah, it's lovely that and to kind of draw a line from Esther, because she always talks about unraveling. Um Most podcasts she talks about that kind of I shouldn't tease her on that because she'll probably like stop saying it, but it's such a perfect analogy for us that when we come into unschooling we have to unravel as a parent. And so my whole thing is that, we're kind of picking up the threads that serve us, and weaving it back together into like a new life and a new self. So yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
brilliant.
that's
So now I get to say, if you haven't listened to episode 1 of season 3, where I talked to Makiba, it's literally called Unraveling and Unschooling. So there's a nice little,
yeah, cool.
nice little
Segue into that.
segue into that. Yeah, lovely.
Like,
Thank you
yeah.
so much for giving us
That's all
your
right.
time this morning. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's been brilliant talking to you. And thank you so much for sharing so deeply your life and your experience of homeschooling.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Heidi. Talk to you soon.